I think what Hasbro are doing with Age of the Primes is finding a groove. I'm starting to think that almost each one represents an iconic era of Transformers media. And don't get me wrong, I could totally be incorrect on this, but with these three in particular, I'm starting to get that vibe. Welcome one and all to the display case. I'm Nate, and today we're looking at Transformers Age of the Primes, Onyx Prime, Alpha Trion, and Micronus Prime. Jumping right in, we have these beautiful windows on the front of the boxes with iconic artwork of each of the primes. They're also adorned with this lovely golden Age of the Primes branding with step counters that I didn't realize this before, but represents each of their alternate modes. As with the other primes boxes, their names are golden as well, which is a nice change of pace from our usual white. Here's Age of the Primes Vortex's box so you can see the differences. On the right side of the box, we have the art of the Prime statues, which I'm starting to think aren't supposed to connect, at least they don't here, just because they're in different size boxes, but maybe if you got the same size boxes with different Prime statues and put them together, then it might work. Then on the back of the box, we have renders of each of the bots in their robot and alternate modes, I'm not going to say vehicle, as well as some callouts with Cybertronian text referencing their artifacts. Alpha Trion's translates to Quill and Covenant Book, referencing the Covenant of Primus. Micronus's translates to the Chimera Stone. And Onyx Prime's translates to the Triptych Mask, which seems to be more of a spear. And then on the left side of the box, we have some awesome key art of each of the primes, as well as some Transformers branding. Yeah, I just love how each of these guys has a different sort of art style, if you get what I mean. And with that comes different inspirations as well. You can tell that each of these primes was inspired by their appearance in a specific set of Transformers media. And not only that, the specific figure design and engineering also reminds me of different eras of Transformers as a whole. You can tell at the highest level that Alpha Trion's clearly meant to be G1, Micronus is more Robots in Disguise 2015 crossed with Armada, and Onyx Prime is obviously the aligned continuity. And I gotta tell you right now, straight up, I am a big fan of what they're doing here. I think if they're going down this path, I'm all for it. Let's get into it. So this little blue dude actually isn't Micronus Prime, not specifically. I'll explain what I mean in just a second, but you can see here he comes with the Chimera Stone, which looks kinda more like a turbine than a stone, but I'll let that pass. Inside this battlesuit, however, is Micronus himself. In his alternate form at least. See, this battlesuit is actually supposed to be the first iteration of the Apex armor, for those of you familiar with Transformers Prime. And this disc might look familiar to you as well if you grew up with Transformers Armada like I did. It's actually the first iteration of a Minicon panel that Micronus actually turns into. And yeah, he is a very small guy, even smaller than the smallest figures in my collection. Nonetheless, he is very detailed, clearly inspired by his appearance in the 2015 Robots in Disguise cartoon. You can't mistake that chin for any other era. But even against another Minicon like the recent Legacy Jolt, you can see just how small Micronus is. And yeah, he's fully living up to his name. So it makes sense that they packaged him with the Apex armor to fill out the box. One thing that I find really funny and interesting about Micronus though, is that he has 5mm portholes for hands. And it's not so much that he has them, more what he can do with them. For example, you can give him Megatron's fusion cannon if you want. Or even make him hold Devastator's gun. Heck, you could even give him other Minicons in the Armada Starsaber to hold. Or better yet, the original Requiem Blaster from Armada. the possibilities are endless. Micronus has a lot of articulation, mostly in the form of ball joints. He's got one in his shoulder, allowing for full rotation and inwards-outwards movement. One in his elbow that allows for a 90-degree bend and some elbow rotation. A ball joint in his head, allowing for up and down movement as well as rotation. His legs are on mushroom pegs, allowing for forwards, backwards, and side-to-side movement, as well as a 90-degree bend at the knee, allowing for some knee rotation as well. So when Micronus is in his disc form, he can plug directly into the chest of the Apex armor, and that suit actually has some good articulation in and of itself. It's actually very similar to the weaponizers of Siege, Earthrising Kingdom. He's got a 5mm hinge joint in his shoulder, allowing for 90 degrees movement out to the side and rotation all the way around. He's also got a rotation at his bicep and a hinge joint in his elbow, allowing for 90-degree movement, as well as some mushroom peg hands that can rotate all the way around. He's got a really hard to move head and neck joint that can look side to side and up and down just a smidge. All that plus hinge joints at the legs, allowing for forwards, backwards, and sideways movement. Rotation at the thigh, as well as a 90-degree bend at the knee. On top of that, a 90-degree bend at the ankle. So, although the articulation is serviceable, it's not going to blow you away in any capacity. Like most figures, I do wish he had more range, but that's okay, you can still pull off some pretty simple poses. One thing that disappointed me though, is these handgun things. They really look like they would fit 5mm port blast effects, but unfortunately, they don't. They don't fit any blast effect that I have, even though they look like they're supposed to. But something cool is that he is built like an older Transformers weaponizer, meaning he's held together with 5mm ports that you can take off and put onto other figures. And in doing that, after removing Micronus from the armor, you can actually separate him into some pretty basic components, that being his arms, his legs, and his head and chest. You can then take his legs and fold them up a little bit to form a big wheel sort of thing with 4 ports in it. Then, as you have all the parts laid out in front of you, you should be able to attach them to someone like Fireflight like it says in the instructions. It's not really the most flattering set of armor though. In fact, I think it looks better on bigger figures, for example like Alpha Trion here. It comes together as a battle pack well enough, but I don't think I'll be using this functionality again. But now that we have all the pieces of Micronus laid out, plus Micronus himself, we could probably do something a little bit better than a backpack. So here Micronus is using his Apex armor as, I guess, a unicycle, which is a lot less cool now that I've said it out loud. But don't get me wrong, this mode is pretty cool. Although it might have some significant trouble standing up on its own without a bit of balancing work, once you get it working or alternatively fold the arms down to balance it out, it is quite nice to just have sitting there with Micronus riding on the top. It also offers a good amount of play value with Micronus as the mini-bot, and then riding this really cool unicycle thing that turns into a giant robot. I really like it. And what a classic we have here in Alpha Trion. This version of the character is based on his appearance in an episode called War Dawn, where Silverbolt and the aerial bots actually go back in time to witness Alpha Trion creating Optimus Prime from Orion Pax. Hence his younger look without the beard, nice and cool. Alpha Trion comes with some pretty iconic accessories for Transformers lore, like the Covenant of Primus, and the Cybertronian quill he used to author it. So the Covenant of Primus is molded in this really nice red plastic and looks pretty plain from the outside, until you open it and see some nice homages to Beast Wars inside, where we first saw the Covenant. On the second page, you can then see some Cybertronian writing that translates to "Till all are one." And then there's a blank page behind that, which I'm totally fine with. The Covenant can then be plugged directly into Alpha Trion's hand using a 5mm port on the back, allowing for some natural enough looking writing poses. Trion's third accessory is sort of like this shield piece with hinged panels that can fold in and out and backwards on either side. Flip Trion around and you can actually plug this piece into his backside, forming sort of an extension of his iconic cape. And yeah, it looks pretty good as a piece of accessory storage, and it incorporates into the figure, which I love. And Alpha Trion's last accessory is actually a callback to another episode called Forever is a Long Time Coming, I think, and it's actually his Autobot symbol itself. In the episode, Trion uses the Autobot symbol as a remote for these massive Dark Guardians that are like big Omega Supremes, but it's disguised, which is pretty cool, as his Autobot logo, which at the time was the symbol of Quintesson oppression and slavery. Although it is hard to get Trion actually holding the symbol with his hands, you can plug it into the port using that 5mm peg that he plugs into the body with. But it is a very lightweight and easily lost piece, so I think I'm just going to keep it on Alpha Trion for now anyway. So speaking of Transformers eras, I really think that this guy represents what we recently experienced in Transformers Siege. Just through the design language alone, it's giving me a lot of Siege vibes. In particular, the really detailed line work, the pointed, angular, and square proportions, as well as some of the articulation points as well. To me, it just feels like something that would have come out during that renaissance of Transformers figures, and I absolutely love that. It feels like a neat, tidy callback to a time when things were brand new. Speaking of articulation, Alpha Trion actually has some really surprising elements, including a head that hinges down and I guess all the way back, that's a little bit weird, shoulder pads that go up and down, shoulders that go all the way around as well as all the way out, about 90 degrees, elbows that bend inwards just above 90 degrees, hands that open, but frustratingly no wrist rotation. The cool and surprising part is he has an ab crunch that can go forward about 45 degrees and backwards maybe about 30 degrees. He's also got a rotating waist, hip skirts that flip up, as well as hips that go forwards, backwards, and all the way out to the side, as well as the thigh swivel, a 90-degree bend at the knee, maybe a little bit more, and a 90-degree bend at the ankle. So yeah, especially with that ab crunch, which is a big surprise, he can get into some pretty good poses, although I am very disappointed with the lack of wrist rotation. It feels like a standard piece of articulation that was just dropped entirely. It's also kind of funny with his ab crunch. Sometimes, because his head is so far forward, it kind of just looks like he's disappointed or giving someone a lecture, like the aerial bots here. The new version of Alpha Trion also differs rather significantly from the previous version released in Transformers Legacy as part of the 2-pack. The old version was a remold of Studio Series Scourge, while the new one is a completely new mold. You can see that the new one also gets rid of the backpack, has a few more muted colours overall, and has a more grittier take on the detailed sculpting. Not to mention that it actually represents a younger version of Alpha Trion overall, whereas the previous release represents an older iteration. Alpha Trion, being a new mold, also has a nice breath of fresh air in his new transformation. So, yeah, this might feel like a little bit of a weird one, but I assure you it is actually based on something. It's actually from an unused concept from an IDW comic for a Cybertronian hovercraft, which I think is pretty cool. It does have some really nice detail, and the colours really pop, especially the blues, the purples, the silvers, and that touch of red. You can also store Alpha Trion's accessories, the Covenant of Primus, and its accompanying quill, very neatly I might add, on the underside of the hovercraft. They plug into some nicely hidden tabs that tuck them away pretty nicely. You can't even see that they're there from the top. It also looks like he has a port on the underside that's supposed to hold the display stand, but unfortunately that hole is too loose for the stand to plug into and he'll end up just falling over. And when we compare him to the older Legacy version, it's a rare occasion where I don't really want to recommend one or the other. It's more so that they're different styles, different design languages of Transformers, and it's really up to your personal preference which one you prefer. And I think you'll be happy either way. These are both really good figures. But overall, he's still a pretty good design. Alright, Onyx Prime time. Now, I will admit, this guy looks pretty tough, but apparently is one of the kindest primes out there, with a really gentle soul. He's also clearly represented in that aligned continuity look from Transformers Prime, with sharp angles, foregoing that really blocky look that we've been getting used to lately. He also comes with some of the coolest accessories out of all three of these figures, namely the triptych mask, that is forged here into sort of a spear. You can see how the triptych is sort of represented by these three tiki-style masks on the spear that allow Onyx apparently to see things that other Transformers just cannot throughout the Transformers universe. And Onyx can hold the spear in a variety of ways. Firstly, tabbing this tab into a slot on his hand, and secondly, because the spear is 5mm wide, you can just snap or slide it into the hole in the middle of his hand. And yeah, I think this is pretty cool. Other than the fact that the spear is only painted on one side, it's held together well and it holds nicely in either position in his hand. And thankfully, he can store it just as well as he can hold it. If you flip Onyx around, he's got these tab holes in the back of the wings, which you can plug the spear directly into. And as another cool accessory that gets a little bit more play in one of his alt modes, he comes with a removable tail that can be split in half and extended to form sort of like this Cybertronian bow. And it doesn't have a 5mm port, so you do have to plug it into his hand slot, and it is a little bit looser than I'd like it to be, but you can take the stick part of the spear, with or without the triptych accessory, and attach it to higher up on the bow, which just looks amazing. So even outside all of his accessories, Onyx is still a pretty new style of Transformer in and of himself, and that reflects itself in his articulation. He's got a hinge joint at the base of his neck, allowing him to look all the way up, as well as a ball joint at the base of his head. He's got shoulder pads on hinges that allow his shoulders to go up just about 90 degrees. He's then got a rotating elbow with a 90-degree bend. He's also got rotating wrists, as well as opening and closing hands. If you lift up both the front and back flaps, he's got a full waist rotation, as well as cool animal legs that can go forwards, out to the side, and with a really nice thigh swivel. He's also got knees that can bend inwards at 2 locations, as well as a 45-degree ankle tilt. He's also got some articulation in his wings, with them being able to ratchet forwards and backwards, and with the ability to fully expand or retract them. So yeah, you've got a wide range of options to pose him however you want, either as a really cool animalistic badass, or even as a really cool gentle giant who's a friend to all. I really appreciate Hasbro's dedication and ability as well to do something different here with Onyx, especially when it comes to exploring his beast modes. So I'm not going to call this a centaur because it's got wings. So according to Google, it's called a purgator, but I still think it is awesome. I love the way that the triptych mask connects to the Cybertronian bow to form this devastating weapons combo, even though it doesn't quite stay fully tabbed in with the added weight. I love how the head compresses into an animalistic form, and the cloven hoofs add to this awesome animalistic poise. Although it is a little bit weird that the shoulder joints are now exposed, they look a little bit out of place. And although there is some nice techno-organic detail on the back, it is also weird that the beast mode head is just sticking out there. We also get some additional articulation in the new front legs. We get forwards, backwards and sideways movement, as well as 2 knee joints, a thigh swivel, and a hinge at the foot that just goes down, but I guess that's more for the robot mode. They're also a lot looser than I would like, especially in comparison to the rear robot mode legs. Overall though, he does have quite a unique presence, and I would wager on anyone's shelf he would catch the average person's eye. And even though they've taken away his height by folding in his rear legs, he's not small by any means of the word. Here he is next to another Beast character in Beast Wars Megatron, and you can see he just towers above him, especially with the wings. So this is Onyx Prime's Beast mode, and it's sort of like a griffin except it's got 6 legs. And I'm trying to refrain from saying that it is just Onyx Prime lying down, but it kind of is, unfortunately. Nevertheless, I do love it. Although, when you bring the wings up, there are these massive gaps in between sort of the legs and the base of the wings, which you can remedy, as the instructions say, by pulling up the middle legs and then folding them just around Onyx's beast mode chest, just like in robot mode. And I think I like this version of the Griffin a lot better, just because it covers up that area below the wings. I also prefer it because with the shoulder pads flared out a little, it gives him a little bit more mass, which makes him a bit more intimidating in the display, especially against the other primes. Weirdly, I think this is my least favourite form of Onyx Prime. The beast mode head is a little arbitrary, and he's got some weird proportions in this mode. Overall, I think with these 3 new primes, they've tried 3 very different new things with them. Micronus started off with that combining into the power suit gimmick, Alpha Trion is a new take on an old classic, and then Onyx Prime really kicks off that beast mode era that I hope to see more of down the line from Hasbro. And I really hope to see a Transformers Prime Predaking from this mold down the line as well. But I think each one of these characters brings a unique aspect of the Transformers universe to the front page as part of the Age of the Primes toy line, not just within the primes themselves. And I'll tell you what, with each prime that comes out, I grow more and more excited to complete the set. These guys look incredible next to each other, and I can't wait to get more. And I think I'm confident in saying that each one of these primes represents a different aspect of Transformers history in and of themselves. Alpha Trion feels right at home in Transformers Siege, Micronus comes from the Dreamwave comics, Primer comes from the Aligned continuity, Solus comes from the Power of the Primes, Onyx comes from Transformers Prime, and Micronus feels right at home in the Unicron trilogy. And I feel like together, they are definitely more than the sum of their parts. And honestly, I can't wait to complete them, even with the ones that are out right now that I haven't got. They'll be probably in the next Primes video, but I can't wait to have them up on my shelf, truly. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you like my content, check out my channel for more videos just like this one. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or even leave a comment with your own thoughts. I'd love to read them. Thank you again, and we'll catch up soon.